All right, another Heart Dealer podcast, this time with Tim Quirk, SVP product at Zedge. Is that accurate?
That's my title.
But you do so much more. I mean, you might be doing that and you've been there for a while, but founder of Too Much Joy and Wonderlic, also a musician. I think you've been at Zedge for like 10 years plus now.
Hold on, I think I just started year 8. Zedge acquired a startup I'd founded at the end in September of 2017. So
Good for
8
you. I mean, almost a decade. That's some tenure right there. Born in a suburb of New York, but then I think moved to California around 18 and lived there since. Is that accurate?
I went to college in California, and then the band was Too Much Joy was based out of New York, so I went back to New York for a while. But we got signed to an indie label in San Francisco that was based out of San Francisco, and I fell in love with the label manager there. We got married. She moved to New York because that's where the band was, but we always talked about moving back. So I've been back in California since '97.
Nice.
Well,
I've only been to California once. It's lovely. I've been to New York many times. I mean, totally different vibes between the two. Why don't you tell me a bit about, young Tim? How did you fall in love with music? Was it something that was at home? Was it just personal discovery? Like what led you to the journey that you're on now?
Okay, this is I can tell this story. So I guess it started with my parents' record collection, as most of us do, or your relatives. My parents had a decent stereo, and they liked to drink cocktails by the fireplace. When they got home from work, and I would make their cocktails, and I would choose the records, and I would make the fire, and then we'd sit in the living room and converse. So my tastes initially were their tastes, which basically meant they had Tommy by The Who. That was probably the coolest thing in their collection, and then it meant ABBA and Neil Diamond mostly. Uh, and so I loved putting on all those records, but with the ABBA and the Neil Diamond, I liked them best when I played them on 45 instead of
Mm.
33 in the third. So I didn't know it, but I was trying to invent punk pop, even when I was like 8 years old. And then I think when I was 8 or 9 years old, third or fourth grade, the first album I bought with my own money was Neil Diamond's Gold. It was recorded live at the Troubadour, but I was 8 years old. I didn't know what a live album was. I just bought it because it had all his hits on it. I was like, "Oh, this has every Neil Diamond song I like." And then, I guess, friend in middle school, Sandy, he had a cousin, I think, in the UK who was sending him cool music, so he turned me on to the Ramones and the Clash, uh, and, so when up until I heard the Clash, I just had a standard suburban kid's musical taste. I had a bunch of Aerosmith records, a bunch of Kiss records, my Bruce Springsteen records, my Bob Seger records. And then I heard The Clash and my whole life changed. Like I couldn't understand a word they were saying, but I could tell they were pissed off, and I was pissed off at the time. It sounded like what music was supposed to be.
Mhm.
And I'd amassed a pretty big record collection by that point because I was always sort of the guy that, if I liked a band, I had to have all their records, and then all the solo projects, all the side projects, all the influences, all the people who followed them. So every record led to like 10 more that I had to have. Um, but once I heard The Clash, all of a sudden I could not listen to my Kiss records anymore, or even my Aerosmith records. They just sounded like cartoons. So I would regularly get on the Metro North train, go into Manhattan, go down to Greenwich Village, with a bag of records of Kiss and Aerosmith records that I would sell for 50 cents each in order to buy Clash bootlegs and British imports of more punk rock bands. And then that same guy that turned me on to them, Sandy and I were we were drunk one night sitting on the swing sets at our grade school, and talking about how lame the high school dances were because the high school bands, they all had synthesizers and they were just totally mauling Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd songs. Like, those dances would be so much better if somebody played some fucking Clash. And then we sort of looked at each other. We're like, songs don't sound that hard to learn. Maybe we could do it. And so we signed up. He started taking bass lessons, and I started taking guitar lessons from the same guy. So basically, we book an hour, and for the first half hour, he'd teach Sandy how to play bass while I sat there, and then Sandy would sit there and he'd teach me how to play guitar. We are going to form a band with two other friends of ours to play these Clash songs, but Sandy picked up his bass much faster than the rest of us picked up our instruments. And so one day I heard. Uh, Police on My Back from Sandinista blaring in my town, and I thought Sandy and I were the only people who knew who The Clash were, so I was like, "This is great. Someone else in Scarsdale likes The Clash. I'm gonna go find them and make a new friend." So I just followed the music until I got to the house where it was playing, and it turns out it was my friend Sandy's house, who'd gotten impatient with the slow pace of learning of the other 3 guys in the band, and had gotten together with some other kids, who already knew how to play their instruments, and they were playing a really credible version of Police on My Back. So I walk into Sandy's backyard. I'm like, "Oh, what's going on, guys?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm forming a band with these guys." I was like, "Well, what about our band?" He goes, "Well, you can be the singer in this band." I was like, "Okay." So basically, Too Much Joy was formed in Betrayal. Uh, and then, we started playing Clash songs, and, we'd forgotten we were the only people in our town who liked the Clash or who knew who they were. So we figured if people were gonna boo us and not know what we were playing, they might as well boo our own songs. So we started writing our own songs. Kept that up through high school and college,
Yeah.
self-released our first record, and then got picked up by an indie and then signed to Warner. So
That's awesome. I mean, when I was initially prepping for our chat, I was so pleasantly surprised that you had this big musical angle because I was fascinated by the tech, and I've used Zedge in the past, actually still do, and did many years ago. We'll talk about that. And then I started to see like the history, and that you were working on music products, and then all of a sudden there was this musical career. So uh, I love talking about music. I would love to explore that a bit more. You mentioned just now that you kind of had a music discovery similar to me. I was also in middle school and was listening to like classical and jazz and blues and classic rock from my dad at home. And then all of a sudden in the late 80s, there was like hip hop and rock and alternative, and then grunge happened. And so my mind all of a sudden exploded because there was Public Enemy and Rage Against the Machine and Naughty by Nature and Nirvana, and I was like, "What is happening? I need to know all of this." And much like you, I amassed a catalog of way too much stuff that I have to have. What was it like, in that time releasing an album independently? I know what it's like now with all the tools and technologies we have, but it almost seemed like if you didn't have label support then, it was almost impossible to release something.
Yes and no. I would say, we had a very 20th century career, in that, we started recording our own stuff just at a local studio. And the guy that ran the studio, once we had enough songs for a record, he turned us onto this place in Canada where you could master a record, where you could basically print up 1,000 copies of a vinyl record. I think maybe it's like $1,300, $1,700, something like that for 1,000
Yeah.
albums. And raising that much money as a band wasn't that difficult. So we managed that, and we pressed up 1,000 copies of our first release, and we borrowed a mailing list from some musician friends of ours who'd put out a couple of records already. We put their label name, Stone Garden Records. It was this band called Pop Art. So they lent us their logo, their label name, and their mailing list. And I think we sent about 600 of the records out to college radio stations, and the rest we just gave to record stores on consignment and sold on tour. And that got us, there was already enough of an independent music scene,
Mhm.
called college rock or indie rock back in the day, and uh, enough of them started playing our songs, some of the more novelty songs on our first record, because we weren't just writing novelty songs, but they were the ones that stood out because everything else was like, juvenile poetry crap, as we were learning how to write songs. But the
Yeah.
funny ones, sort of resonated with people. So we started getting some commercial airplay from stations like 99X, down in San Diego, well, actually in Tijuana, but, it broadcast to Southern California. Um, and that got us, enough of a buzz that we could book some shows and start touring. And then that all got us enough of a buzz that we came to the attention of Alias Records, this indie label in San Francisco. And so they signed us and put out our next record. And then that got, we made a video for that. That got on 120 minutes, got some more commercial and college radio airplay. And then that record got picked up and re-released by Warner Brothers with some bonus tracks, and then we made a couple records for Warner Brothers, and MTV started playing our music videos in the daytime, which was a thing they used to do. There used to be a station called MTV that played music videos in the daytime. And so all of that was, we were signed to a major after our second record.
Mhm.
We were getting commercial airplay and we were getting on MTV. And what I tell people today, especially young musicians, everybody's pissed off at Spotify and digital distribution, and they think it's destroying their the market that used to exist for middle class musicians. And what I explain is it's not digital distribution. It's just how cheap it is to make and record professionally sounding music these days. It's the competition, right?
Yep.
I mean, back in the late '80s, early '90s, if we got a track, on a TV show or a commercial and in a movie, that was like you'd get, and we were a baby band, right? You'd get like at least $35,000 for the masters and, for the master rights and 35 for the composition rights for the publishing. So you'd make at least 70 grand from a placement like that. These days, you're lucky if you can get 10 grand for the same placement.
Mhm.
Really, really lucky, right? It's just there's so much music out there, and that's all just that has nothing to do with digital distribution. That's just how much good music there is being made by people that all of which could sound great on the radio today.
Yeah.
So I would say it was easier back then. I wish we'd had these tools that could have connected us directly with our fans back then because we would have been massive had we had those tools. But I feel bad for people trying to break into the business today because it's so much harder to rise above the noise because there's
Mhm.
just so much. I'll use the word. There's so much content out there.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and I think that we'll touch on that because I'm really, fascinated by your journey to where you are now and Rhapsody and some of the companies that you or even products that you helped to launch for musicians, right? By musician for musician. So you think that now the problem is simply volume, that there's just so much content competition that it's harder to break through because you're competing against a sea of, duplicates?
Yes, yes. At the same time, it's harder because of that, but it's slightly easier because it's much easier for people to hear you.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, your first question was how did I become like a music head? I guess that wasn't the way you phrased it, but I was one of those guys who I like music more than the average citizen, and there
Mhm.
used to be a cost, an economic cost, and a social cost to being a music geek like that, right? And so we were a tribe apart, and because we were sort of obsessive music collector guys and gals. Uh, but what online what digital distribution does now, since all it costs to listen to a new song is your time rather than your
Mhm.
money, it's average citizens are much more like they can become much more musically adventurous than they were in the olden days. In the olden days, it was easy to be a Madonna or a U2 because consumers would economize by buying things that were already pre-endorsed by the crowd,
Yeah.
right? And you don't have to do that anymore. So people become a lot more exploratory once music is essentially free to them. So that's basically good news. Like I say this all the time. In the old days, if I was in Amoeba Music and I saw Too Much Joy record in a used bin, I was happy because I knew a new listener was much more likely to take a chance on me for $10 than they were for $20.
Mhm.
And the way major label accounting worked, I wasn't going to get a penny of either sale either way. So I was happy for them to get my music as cheaply as possible because that would bring them into I didn't think of it as an ecosystem, but it was an ecosystem that would bring them into my world. And I could sell them concert tickets and t-shirts and my next record and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. You made a lot of valid points. If you think about, when you and I were collecting that music and buying those CDs, I was getting a, $20 a week allowance, and I knew that that meant that I could buy one new CD kind of like every week, and then start to add to my collection. And even if it wasn't something that I liked, even if it was something that maybe there was only one single I knew, I could passively risk that for $20. Now, it's not the same, right? You're basically paying subscription models and you're getting access to everything. So the consumption habits have totally shifted, and the money that you're paying, that $20, is not going directly to the artist, or at least close to directly to the artist, like the CD sale would have been back in the day. And you're absolutely right about amount or volume, because I mean, New Music Tuesday was the thing, right? That was the industry standard. And I remember going to the store and there would be like, I don't know, 100 new releases. And of the 100 new releases, you probably knew like a good amount, especially if you were an audiophile. Now, I'm trying to tell these artists, there's like 60 to 100,000 songs being uploaded a day. You can't compete.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be much more meticulous with your approach, with your marketing, with your strategy, and think about the music in a different way than you would have, 20 years ago.
Yep.
So you're still making music now. How do you feel about, your world as a musician now versus when you were, signed to that first label and touring? Are you still just doing it for the same reasons? Is there a huge shift?
I would say I said we're back to doing it for the original reasons, which sort of changed over time. Once we got signed, and there's all these expectations, your approach to sort of the rationale for what you're doing changes. And I remember this became clear to me after we got dropped by Warner's, and we were recording our next record, and we were shopping around to different people. And we were in the studio one day, and the guys were A-Bing our latest mix with something that was on the radio. It was probably Green Day at the time, because this was mid '90s, and they were just trying to see how it compared sonically. If it was playing after this on the radio, uh, and I remember just being really dismayed by what we were doing. I was like, this was never why we started doing this. We were never like, the goal wasn't to get on the radio. The goal was to
Yeah,
get these sounds in our heads, out of our heads and into the world so other people, so we could share them with people. And obviously you want as many people as possible to like and buy your stuff and come and see you. But it was never, my goal was never to sell out Madison Square Garden. My goal was just to play music for people who'd understand it, however few of them there might be.
yeah.
And so, but once you're signed, that's not enough. You need to keep selling more, and that sucked a lot of the joy out of it.
Mhm.
And so we never, Too Much Joy never broke up, but we all, once we realized the brand was not going to make our living for us anymore, we all got day jobs, we got married, we had kids, and so music became something we did rather than our entire lives. It was just
So
one of
too much joy went to not enough joy.
Yeah, yeah, basically. And so Jay and I, the guitar player in Too Much Joy, we had both moved out to California. He lives down in LA. I'm up in Oakland. And we decided to meet in Santa Barbara for a weekend and just write some songs, with no goal. There was no plan of recording. We weren't even planning on recording them. We weren't going to shop them. We were not trying to get another record deal. We just wanted to remember what it was like being friends, because we used to be friends,
Yeah.
and who made music together, just for the love of doing it. And it just that, and we came up with this, and so we wrote a bunch of songs we really liked, and we're like, well, now we should record these. So we started going into the studio, and I didn't even have a name for the project, right? They were just these songs that Tim and Jay were writing. And around the same time, I'd gone to work. I got caught up in the dot-com boom. I'd gone to work for this company called listen.com. So now it's like 2000, and Too Much Joy still didn't have a website. I was like, I need to get with the times. I was in the business now. So I was working for listen.com. So I was speaking on panels and stuff. I was like, it's kind of embarrassing if I'm at like South by Southwest or New Music Seminar or something and talking on a panel about digital promotion, and my band doesn't even have a website. So we made a Too Much Joy website, and I didn't just want it to be backward looking. I wanted it to have something, newish for fans. So we put up some of these songs we'd recorded. We were like, what should we call ourselves? We're like, oh, we'll call ourselves Wonderlick, after Bucky Wonderlick from Don DeLillo's Great Jones Street, his rock and roll novel. Uh, and we gave a song away for free. Right? It was just so fans would have something new to listen to. And sort of as an afterthought, we put a little PayPal button on the site. And we said, oh, if you want to tip the band, you can do, if you want us to record more, donate, and maybe we'll record some more. We made more money in 24 hours from that PayPal button than we had on Warner Brothers, right?
Wow.
Well, it's easy because we hadn't made a penny on Warner Brothers. All the
Yeah.
money we made on Warner Brothers had come from publishing. Um, but it sort of took us by surprise. And so we got a bit more serious about it after that. And we released a song a month on the website, and we committed to everybody. We're like, hey, if you keep hitting that PayPal button, we're gonna give you a song a month. And then Future Farmer Recordings came, a San Francisco label, and I was meeting with them. I was working, Listen.com by this time had developed Rhapsody, one of the first on-demand music streaming services. And so I was talking to Future Farmer in our office one day about getting their catalog into the system. And the guy I was talking to said, well, this Wonderlick record, we'd like to put that out. I was like, "Well, it's not really a record. It's just these 12 songs we recorded. They were not conceived of as a record." He goes, "Well, they sound like a record and we want to put it out." So like we went out drinking and we wrote down a deal on a cocktail napkin. I was like, a 50 split. And it was just like 3 bullet points on a cocktail napkin. We signed a Future Farmer and we started recording again. And so now we've made 5 Wonderlick records and we started making Too Much Joy records again after the pandemic. So we've come back to it, but it's much more like it used to be, right?
Mhm.
There's no goal. Like we just re-released. So it's 35 years since that Alias record that Warner Brothers re-released. Son of Sam I Am came out. So we got the masters back. They reverted to us in July. So on Halloween, we re-released, we did a Taylor Swift type thing where we did some re-records, put in some demos, and, threw in some outtakes and stuff. So it's like a Sandinista sized reissue. It's got like 34 tracks on it. Um, and it's, it's available through Bandcamp. I fucked up when I set it up with my digital distributor. So it's not in Spotify yet. It should get there next week, hopefully. But the band we were talking to each other were like, "Do we wanna get a label to put this out?" And we were talking to a couple labels about possibly putting it out, but the more we thought about it, we're like, we know everyone who's gonna buy this record, right? Why would we give 50% of what we're gonna make to a label? And the answer was, well, because they'll put it in physical retail, we can't do that ourselves, and maybe they'll activate some, dormant fans that we can't reach ourselves.
Yeah.
But the more we talked about it, the more we realized we didn't give a shit about that. Like that wasn't the goal. We just wanted to have our version of the record, memorialized for posterity. The super fans could get it. So basically we self-released it. It's not in stores and we didn't care. Right. So
Yeah.
it's much more and the thing is, obviously you always like whatever you recorded most recently the best, but I really do think our music has gotten significantly better. It's hard to get worse at something when you do it, for 40 years.
Well, I mean, good for you. I think that that's the main thing, right? Is I say this to everyone that's an artist or a creator is when you, like you said, you have this thing in your idea or sorry, in your mind and you just want to get it out. And it sounds like you're putting out exactly what you feel it should be without any impact from anyone else. I want to talk about that transition with listen.com and technology. But before we go there, two things. One is you said you met your wife at the first label, was it?
Yeah, at Alias, she was running she was Alias Records when Son of Sam I Am first came out.
That's awesome, and everything is going well still? Was there a big conflict with the records and and the negotiation, or did it make the negotiation easier?
No, we've been together since 1989, so and married for 33 of those years. So yeah, it's we met we I was a dude in a band who disappeared for months at a time when she met me, and I'm still a dude in a band who disappears for months at a time. So
Yeah, good for you. How much of, her support is there for you to be the man that you are with the innovation and the tech and the touring and the talks?
oh, it's all. I mean, it's she's there as a muse as well. Our biggest songs are all about her.
Amazing. Good for you. I mean, it's important to have that inspiration and also acknowledge it. Um, Last thing about music, or at least for now, is I was fascinated by the stories around you sticking up for injustices, so to speak. You know where I'm going with this. 1990 hip hop group Two Live Crew, they get arrested for obscenity, which looking back on it now with some of the Nicki Minaj songs that are out there, it's like that was not obscene. That was like very tame considering what we're releasing now. Tell me that story. Tell me about how you guys stood up and protested, and then ultimately you were arrested later too.
Yeah, so for your younger viewers slash listeners, they may be interested to know that Florida has always been Florida. It's been Floriding for a while now. And back in 1989, 1990, some judge in Florida decided that this Two Live Crew hip hop record called "As Nasty as They Wanna Be" was obscene, and it was illegal to sell it. You know, clear violation of the First Amendment. But that became the law in Florida, and they started arresting record store owners who were selling the record, and then they arrested the band, Two Live Crew themselves, when they played the songs at a club called Club Futura in Hollywood, California. And the day after this happened, when it happened, Too Much Joy was in Hollywood recording our debut for Warner Brothers. Um, And that mostly meant we were getting stoned in the lounge while the producer and the mixer were mixing it. So we're getting stoned in the lounge watching MTV News, and we see 2 Live Crew getting arrested, and we're pissed off. And uh, I think it was our bass player, Sandy, said, we should go down to we should go down to Club Futura and do a set of all 2 Live Crew covers. Just to make it clear, Too Much Joy was very influenced by hip hop. We weren't a hip hop band, we were a punk pop band. But on that Son of Sam I Am record, the song that MTV played during the daytime, it was a cover of an LL Cool J song. We basically took his hip hop song, That's a Lie, and we turned it into a punk pop song.
Nice.
And he appeared in the music video. He liked it. And we had KRS-One rap on a song on the next record and stuff like
Oh,
that.
that's cool.
Yeah, we were informed by hip hop without being hip hop. So we were very upset about what was going on, and we thought it would make sense for us to do that. But then as we started talking about it, we're like, well, it shouldn't just be us. We're sort of like, nobody really knows who we are yet. We should go down with REM and Sonic Youth and Talking Heads, and like, everybody should do one 2 Live Crew song. They'll have to rent like 14 school buses to take us all to jail. So, uh, our publicist was in the room at the time, and she goes, "This is a good idea." And so before we knew it, we had the date booked at the same club in Hollywood, Florida, where 2 Live Crew had been arrested, and we started sending out invites. And we issued a press release saying any band that wants to come and play a 2 Live Crew song is welcome to play. And we talked to all our friends, and everybody had the exact same response, which was, "That's super cool. It's a great idea. We're so glad you're doing it. We're busy that day." And so we ultimately had to decide, do we still go through with this? If we just do it ourselves, it's going to look like a publicity stunt rather than a political protest. But we really believe in it firmly. So we did it just on our own. We did a set of, and so basically I had to buy As Nasty as They Want to Be and put it in my CD player and keep hitting pause while I transcribed all the lyrics because there wasn't really an internet yet. And
Yeah.
there was no way to go get them. And I will tell you, I hate that fucking record. I think that record's a piece of shit, right? It's not funny. It's not creative. It's misogynistic. It's crude. I'm not a fan. And
Right.
I would literally only listen to the record and transcribe the lyrics when my wife was out of the apartment. We lived in a little studio apartment in Manhattan, so at the time, and I disliked the album so much. I didn't want her to subject her to it. But all of that's irrelevant. The First Amendment means if someone wants to make shitty art, they're allowed to make shitty art, right?
Amen.
Don't buy it. That's that's the appropriate market response to art you don't like is don't consume it. So we worked up we did Too Much Joy versions of 5 2 Live Crew songs from Nasty as They Want to Be. We threw in our That's a Lie cover, and some other Too Much Joy songs that were very hip hop inspired. We played a cover of I Fought the Law by The Clash. So it was a set that made a lot of sense. One of the worst shows of our lives because we were terrified. We knew we were going to be arrested the second we walked off the stage, and we were. We spent the night in jail, and we had pro bono representation from the ACLU, who was up in arms about what was going on in Florida. So a couple months later, we had a 3-day trial. Uh, the courtroom was packed for the first day and a half with reporters, and then the first Iraq war broke out in the middle of the trial. So there was been this thing going on called Operation Desert Shield,
Mhm.
and literally on day 2 of our trial, halfway through, Operation Desert Shield turned into Operation Desert Storm, and CNN was just 24 hours coverage of us bombing the hell out of Iraq,
Yeah.
and everybody disappeared from the courtroom. And I got really scared at that point because there were a bunch of people on the jury, who had kids who were overseas in the armed forces. This had all become clear during voir dire. Uh, so we thought there was a very real chance that the jury would be pissed off at these uppity New Yorkers who came down to tell them their business. But they were not. They found us not guilty in about 15 minutes, and they said it would have been faster, but some of them had to go to the bathroom. And then the district attorney said, "Hey, I'm not going to prosecute any more of these cases. Like the juries have spoken, and they're
Yeah.
not giving me convictions on these things, so I'm going to stop pursuing these." So we actually had a positive effect on free speech, even though a lot of people mistakenly assumed it was just a publicity grab.
I mean, I really appreciate the sharings. I didn't know the details, and I respect you and the story even more because now that I know that the album wasn't for you, that you hated it so much, but you still stood up for that, for the right for us to be able to say whatever, we think more or less, that's amazing. So,
Yeah.
based on that morality, based on, what was happening in your career as a musician with being dropped from the label, how much of that do you think informed your desire to create products that were for musicians?
Oh, a lot of it. I mean, definitely everything I've done in my career outside of the band has been informed by my career in the band. When I first, I sort of fell into a straight job accidentally. My life plan
Okay.
with my wife had always been, there was enough money from the publishing deal and stuff like that, that when our daughter was born, neither of us had to work full time for the first 5 years. And we knew that when she went to kindergarten, at that point, one of us, the money would run out, and one of us would go back to work full time. And the plan was always for my wife to do it. I'd
Yeah.
never had a straight job. I was just going to be Mr. Mom, the stay at home dad, who could make some spare money, freelancing and doing the occasional, music thing. Uh, but that life intervened and changed, and my wife couldn't get a job. It's a long story. I won't get into it. But anyway, I had to be the one to go get a job, and I wound up at a company building a music product, on the web, and so it's like 1999. I've just gotten my first straight job, and it became clear to me as I got immersed in this new world that streaming services were coming. Right. So
Mm,
time the phrase was the celestial jukebox. Everyone knew the celestial jukebox was
yeah.
coming.
Which is
Yeah,
funny because jukebox is one of the terms if I remember with Rhapsody, right? There was like a jukebox?
I mean, we called it this. We said the celestial jukebox is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, city. And so it was clear to me that music was going to stop being sold. Was going to cease being a product that people bought and sold on plastic round discs, and was going to become a service where you hopefully paid for access to whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted, wherever you
Uh-huh.
were. And this was such a thrilling prospect to me, because of my experiences as a middle class indie musician. In that we didn't have a lot of fans, but the fans we had loved the shit out of us, like
Right.
super dedicated. So the notion of a world where you could get paid based not on how many people liked you, but on how much the people who liked you, that was clearly going to be great for bands like me. So I was super Pollyanna-ish about the streaming world in 1999 through like 2005, 2007. I'd be speaking on panels. I'd be showing these projections about like what Rhapsody's revenues were going to look like for musicians, once we had 10 million subscribers, a place we never got to. Uh, but the general idea to me was like, this was great because I could recognize it was going to turn average citizens into, music geeks in a way they hadn't been before. And I thought it was going to be great for bands like me. Uh, I was naive. Like, it didn't work out that way. I could not fucking believe that it's legally allowed for Spotify to just decree we're not paying you for the first 1,000 streams. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's lunacy. If you have a 10-track album, right, and every track has 999 streams and you get 0 for that, even though you've got almost 10,000 streams, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been I've been very vocal, um, throughout the years saying, it's pointless to complain about the rates that Spotify or YouTube pay, because even if you doubled them, that's not going to make a significant difference in musicians' lives.
Right.
And the value that they bring in terms of making it easier for people to discover your music is really, really valuable. That's like great. So what people need to learn to do, musicians, managers, labels, is to start thinking about it the way mobile game developers think about their games, right? Which is ARPU, average revenue per user. So the question isn't what does Spotify play? The question is what's my average revenue per user on Spotify? What's my average revenue per user on YouTube? Maybe it's pennies. Uh, my average revenue per user on my Facebook page or on my website is dollars, right? So it just once you realize this, that there's all these different channels out there and you're getting different value from the same number of listens on each of them, then you're like, okay, let's use each of them at what they're best at.
Yeah.
Spotify for me is a way for casual fans who've heard of us to come into our world, right?
Yep.
So I don't complain that Spotify is not paying me. I complain that they're not paying me anything if I'm under 1,000 streams. That's fucking ridiculous. But I don't complain about a third of the penny per play once they do start paying me because I know these are fans I might never have had before.
Right.
Once I get them through Spotify, my job is to bring them into my world and say, okay, now get my music on Bandcamp because that's going to make me a lot more money. Or eventually, and we'll get to this, Tape Deck, a product that I've just
Yeah.
developed. It's going to be part of our conversation. But I've been thinking about it this way for years, and I've been telling musicians, hey, stop stressing that music is free and saying it's devaluing music because that's bullshit. I've said forever, you can't devalue music because music is priceless. And what I mean by that is the, you know, take the most popular artist in the world, Taylor Swift, right? There are more people in the world who don't give a shit about Taylor Swift than who do.
Right.
Right. So for the majority of Earth's population, a new Taylor Swift song is worth nothing to them. Now, to some people, it's worth thousands of dollars, right? And what digital distribution does is it gives you the ability to get the value of your song from each individual fan. So some people it's zero, some people it's a penny, some people it's 10 cents, some people it's $1,000. And what's
Uh-huh.
ironic is Kiss was doing this back in the 70s and 80s, right? They figured this out long before anybody else. You can buy Kiss condoms, you can get buried in a Kiss coffin. They've got all these different ways of monetizing their super fans, right? And it's not just branding. It's a lot of it is fan experiences and things like that. So what I think, musicians need to start figuring out is how do you how do you look at your use stop thinking it's everybody else's job to pay you, right? And start figuring out where are my users coming from and how can I get them off of the low paying outlets and into how can I push them,
Yeah.
move them through my funnel to the places that pay me the most. And I've spent a
Um,
lot of time trying to build some of those places.
yeah. I mean, Tim, that makes so much sense. Technology is a disruptor. It always will. I mean, you mentioned, the 90s, the 2000s. That's when we saw uh, Napster and these other products start to emerge, Kazaa, et cetera. And then it happened with like Uber, then it happened with Airbnb. Now it's happening with blockchain technology and also AI, right? It's just going to constantly disrupt, and we have to simply adapt to technology. We can't necessarily fight it, go with the flow, as they say. Um, Leveraging this concept of Spotify or streaming services as marketing for your product to then bring people into your ecosystem and then funnel them to the areas where there's a higher revenue per user, that's very smart. I mean,
Yeah,
I know that I can do more visibility on YouTube and Instagram for my reels and videos than I can on other platforms. That doesn't mean I'm not going to leverage the other platforms,
right.
but where I'm gonna push, the sign up, the register, the join my mailing list, the buy my merch, it's gonna be on the other ones because I can hopefully translate over. That's, uh, that's smart, and I agree with you. Let's really quickly go into, the time leading to Zedge because there's so much cool shit in there, and I don't wanna, like, unpack all of it, but Listen.com, then Rhapsody, then you helped to build Google Play, and then you went on to found Freeform, which is, I think, what Zedge acquired.
Yeah.
What are some of the coolest things that happened in that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but it's all related. So, I stuck with Rhapsody from 99 to 2010 because I was convinced it was the future. And then Spotify ate our lunch. And it was clear to me that while the music streaming future that I'd envisioned was absolutely coming to pass, the part of my imagination where Rhapsody was leading the charge was not coming to pass. And at that time, Google was making some noise about getting into the space. And so Google recruited me from Rhapsody. I went over, I joined Google initially to help them build a music service. But my boss at the time had a grander vision. So at the time, there was Google Play didn't exist yet. They had this thing called the Android Marketplace that just sold apps and games, and with an emphasis on sell because there wasn't really a notion of a free game back then.
Yeah.
Games cost 99 cents or 4.99 or 19.99 or 49.99 if they'd been ported over from the physical world and already had a huge built-in fan base, but they were mostly paid. And so we started building Google Music at the same time that my boss there were multiple different initiatives around digital content spread around Google. So YouTube had a movie rental thing going on. This different team had an ebook thing going on. I was in the Android team, which obviously had the Android marketplace with apps and games, and we were starting to add music in. And so he basically convinced the his bosses to consolidate everything in one place. So we started building Google Play, which had apps and, it's basically just our digital content store. It's like our iTunes. It had apps and games, it had books and magazines, movies and TV shows, and music. And my role at Google was head of global content programming, which sounds fancier than it is. It basically meant I was in charge of the product marketing managers for books and music and movies and stuff. The ones who decided, like, okay, this is what we're going to promote. This is the original content we're going to create around some of these new releases coming out. Maintaining relationships with all our B2B partners. And
Mhm.
so a big part of my job at Play, after we built Play, was QBRs, quarterly business reviews with our digital content partners. So movie studios, record companies, book publishers, etc. And the QBRs with the record labels, the movie studios, and the book publishers were always miserable. They hated Google. Their businesses were contracting. They thought it was our fault. There was always fewer people on the other side of the table because they kept getting laid off. They just weren't fun. But the QBRs with the app and game developers were frickin' parties, right? They were minting money through Google. They loved us. There was always more people on the other side of the table because their
Yeah.
businesses were growing explosively. So I was at Google for 4 years. And I spent the 4 years I was there trying to figure out, like, these people are all selling digital entertainment products. One sector is seeing absolute explosive growth, and the other three sectors, aren't. So what do these guys know that these other three don't? And I was arrogant enough to think I'd figured it out. So I left Google. I raised some seed money from some angel investors in one venture capital firm to start a company, which was called Freeform Development, to basically teach the music business how to market their product the same way free-to-play mobile gamers developers had done. Because as I said, when I got to Google in 2010, they didn't really have free games. It was Rovio and Angry Birds that sort of
Mm.
sparked the freemium concept. They were making plenty of money through the App Store selling it to iOS users. They could not get Android users to pay for it. So almost in desperation, they released this free version of the game. And before they knew it, they were making more money from the free version of the game than they were from the paid one. And because mobile game companies tend to be run by engineers, they don't have religion about anything. The music business is like, this is the way it's always been done. And if you don't do it the way you
Yeah.
used to do it, we're going to sue you. Uh,
Yeah.
Whereas mobile game developers are just like, oh, this thing that used to work doesn't work anymore. Let's stop doing it. It's logical, right? And
Yeah.
this thing that does work, let's figure out how to optimize it. So an anecdote I tell a lot is when I was at Play, we had over 1 billion customers. So whenever we had a major UX change to the product, we couldn't just push a button and boom, everybody got it at once. You had to roll it out slowly over weeks and months. So on day one, maybe like 0.5% of your user base has the new thing. And day two, maybe it's 1%. But invariably, whenever we started rolling out one of these changes, in the first 48 hours, our top developers who were making the most money would call us up and basically say, something changed. What changed? They weren't necessarily in the 1% that was seeing the new look and feel, but they were so well instrumented, they could tell something had changed in their ecosystem, something in their funnel, for good or for ill. And they
Uh-huh.
had to understand what it was in order for their businesses to keep operating profitably. And I'd never seen the music business work that way. Uh, and so they all, when everybody saw the success that Angry Birds was having, they just changed their business model, like within about 18 months. By the time I left Google 4 years after I got there, I think 93% of the games in Google Play were free
Yeah.
because they just figured it out. What they figured out was if you don't charge up front, if you just give it away and you charge after the fact, you're only going to monetize single digit percentage of your install base. Like 3% is great. If you can get 3% of people to convert into paying customers, that's great. But if you give it away for free, like Candy Crush Saga had over 1 billion users, right? Because they gave it away for free. They own 97% of the people who played that game never gave King a penny, right? They made $1 billion a year from like 3% of their install base. And when I started running the numbers, I was like, you know what? That's the way the music business is working right now. Taylor wasn't quite as big as she is now at the time. I think Justin Timberlake was the hot shit back then. And I started looking at his numbers. I was like, you know what? If you look at all his YouTube views and his album sales, about 3% of the people who watch his videos on YouTube go and buy an album.
Uh-huh.
This is the same thing that I was seeing with Candy Crush Saga. It's like, okay, so I had this concept, and I got the concept because of what I'd been doing at Rhapsody and at Google Play Music. I knew what our marketing teams would pay for leads, as affiliate marketing plans to get people into the top of our funnel to sign up for a free trial. We would literally pay people $15 if they could get someone to sign up for a free trial. Now, selling a digital album wholesale on iTunes would earn you $8 to $10, right?
Mhm.
So getting someone to sign up for a free trial of Rhapsody would get you $15. So it was obvious to me what we needed to do was so the concept behind Freeform was your album is an app. It's not instead of putting it in stores and on iTunes and on Spotify. It's in addition to. But when you make your album an app, you're going to want to drive all your fans to install your app, uh, because then they're your customer. They're not Apple's customer. They're not Spotify's customer. You live in their pocket. You can tell them when you're coming to their zip code. When you have new music. When you have merchandise, you can sell them fan experiences. Um, and so that was part one. And part two was don't charge for the app. Be like a mobile game developer. Give it away for free. Recognize only 3% of the people who install it, if you're lucky,
Mhm.
are going to monetize, but you will make more money doing this than you will selling it. And so the concept was pretty straightforward. Your album was an app, it had lyrics and photos and all those kinds of things. Fans could install the app for free and listen to the album for free once per day. And then the tracks would lock. And if you wanted to hear it more than once per day, you had to take some action to unlock them. That action could just be buying the album. Some people did that, but we knew most people weren't going to do that. So we had an offer wall, just like mobile games have an offer wall. Rhapsody was our hero offer. We basically just said, hey, you want this album for free? Sign up for a free trial of Rhapsody. We will unlock unlimited streaming in this app. You'll have it forever. And we'll even send you MP3s of the album so you don't have to keep the app on your phone if you don't want. Uh,
Oh,
and so basically everybody won. The fans got the free music they were looking for. The artist got the fans as their customers, not Apple's customers. Any artist got $15 instead of $10 every time a customer bought an album through the app. So while we didn't pay per play, we did have an effective per play rate. We released about 18 apps for folks like Lil Wayne and Chris Brown and some other folks, and if you took all the money that all the revenue the apps generated and divided it by all the free plays it took to generate, before people would convert, you basically found we had per play rates ranging from 5 cents per play on the low end to 13 cents per play on the high end. Just orders of magnitude more than what anybody is paying today. And it made sense, right? Like,
mhm.
because we were approaching the the people, everybody who installed the app was sort of pre-qualified. You wouldn't install a Rob Thomas app if you weren't a Rob Thomas fan.
Right.
Uh, so it worked. When we were in the I'd raised about $2 million, and we were running out of that runway, and it was time to raise another round, and we were in like the low hundred thousands of users. So I knew I either needed an exit to a company that could get me tens of millions of users, or I had to raise another round. And at that time, Zedge came calling, and he's the CEO now. He was the COO at the time. He and I had an initial meeting. We just hit it off. And we're like, yeah, this is we're made for each other. So
Yeah.
Zedge acquired Freeform. Zedge had a personalization app. At the time, Zedge was a single product. Zedge
So
ringtones and
let me just jump into him before we go into the Zedge, because I know that that's kind of, where we're heading, and then there's Tape Deck, the product that you're working on now. This was kind of a perfect setup to talk about that last piece. You come from music. You are an artist at heart. You believe in free speech. You believe in what's right. You start to really get immersed in the world of tech, and then through that path, working with different companies, you start to see the writing on the wall, and you see different ways that artists maybe can benefit from this better than the current model now. Does that sound about right?
yeah.
So before we go into that next chapter, I have to ask a random question because I'm a dad and dads like dad humor. So what is your biggest quirk?
Oh, I mean, God, I wouldn't even know how to narrow it down. Um, I guess I mean I probably I'll take an all-encompassing one as I'm a creature of habit. So literally I have the same sandwich at the same time every day and have been doing that for decades, right? And I have to my wife will say like, "Oh, I need a slice of cheese. Cut the cheese, can you cut me one?" And I'll be like, "No, I have to cut the onion first, then I cut the cheese." Or the world will spin off its axis. So maybe that.
That's okay. Yeah, a lot of people that are way above our pay grade have shared that same sentiment. Oh my goodness, Steve Jobs. I mean, like, he famously had all the same outfit because it was one less thing. I mean, even Einstein, same outfit, right? Same suit 5 times because it's one less thing to think about during the routine. So I'm down with that. I'm down with routine and habit. I was at BlackBerry for about 4 years, 2-ish years of that time. I was the global music manager. We were launching the BlackBerry World then, which was the same idea as the Google Play Store. We launched the BlackBerry equivalent of iTunes in 17 countries around the world, and we weren't profitable. We would have been if the product had stayed online, but we weren't. And I remember people at the company saying, like, it's not about profitability, it's about having that because users expect it. And we also had to have Rovio and all these other things that we were licensing and paying for because users expected it, even if it wasn't generating revenue.
Yeah.
I like what you said. It's almost like the drug dealer model. They give them the first one's free, and then you get them hooked and get them going. It's I can see how you're tying that into music now, and with Spotify being a marketing platform rather than focusing on trying to monetize it, use that to grow the rest of the ecosystem. So Zedge, I don't know, early 20s. I'm in university. I discover web design. I was probably using Microsoft Front Page at the time, then figured out how to use code like HTML from that. And then, we all of a sudden have flat panel monitors and things are changing, and I can personalize my phone and my wallpaper. And there's this cool product, Zedge, and I can download ringtones. And I literally have the Halloween soundtrack on my phone this month from Zedge. A very cool tool indeed. What is the Zedge elevator pitch now versus 10, 12 years ago before we get into tape deck?
So 10, 12 years ago, it was everything you or tattoo your phone, was all about expressing your unique individuality through your device.
Yeah.
Now that app is just one piece of a suite of products that Zedge has created. And so I guess the common thread around all of them is that, and I really should have this, I should have the exact phrase down. My CEO will get mad at me that I'm not repeating the exact. Yeah, but basically, we've got, what we're good at is taking masses of digital content, presenting them in to a global audience, and monetizing them in through advertising, subscriptions, and direct sales. So, if you give us a huge mass of stuff, we have the infrastructure to get it, to spread it around the world, to give users easy ways to find what they're looking for in that massive stuff, and
Mhm.
then to monetize on top of it.
I'm not a huge fan of Facebook, now Meta, in general. However, I've always respected their ability, and you said this earlier, to just really quickly pivot. And all of a sudden, your timeline would be different and the feed would be different. And they didn't care. They're like, this makes sense. Let's just do this. Let's just innovate and get stuff out the door. It sounds like a lot of your career has been like that. And it sounds like Zedge as a company is also like that.
It's well, yeah, but also anyone who has been in software development in this century has watched things change radically. So, when I started back in 99 and 2000, uh it wasn't refer it is now referred to as waterfall development, where basically back then you would create a product document that detailed every bit of functionality your software was going to have, and then you would spend 6 to 12 months building that, and then you would ship it, and then people would like it or not. And that has been replaced, and rightly so, by something called agile development, where the idea is you are iterating as fast as you possibly can. You are releasing only the bare minimum necessary to get your product out the door. So when we get to tape deck, I will explain there's a whole bunch of stuff you would expect in a
Yeah.
music service that's not there yet because we haven't built it yet.
Mm.
Now, if this were 2003, we would have built it and then launched it, right? But because it's 2025, you look at a product, you say, okay, what's the bare minimum before it's functional enough that people can see what it's about, and then you put that out, and then you just start. You just keep improving it constantly,
Yeah.
and improve can just mean like you're making minor tweaks, or it can mean you realize, like 3 months in, "Oh, we thought this was gonna be the model, but it's actually the way users are engaging with it means we need to pivot to this." Uh,
Yeah.
so it's if you're in software development, you need to be very, very comfortable with throwing out all your prior assumptions, walking away from products you obsessed over, things like that.
Very cool. I mean, it's something that I think everyone should learn at some point, software development or not, it helps with life.
Yeah.
Um, so you manage product strategy and roadmap, and you manage a large team of product managers, designers, content managers. Before we talk about tape deck, the final hurrah,
Okay.
uh, what's your management style? What has worked for you? You know, I love asking people like you know, how do you communicate? You know, how do you sow positivity within the team and get like the top result from your employees?
So I try to be as hands off as possible. I warn anyone who comes to work for me that if there's a vacuum, I will fill it. But my assumption is there won't be a vacuum, and that I've hired them because they know how to do things I don't know how to do, and they are, I like to hire people who are smarter than me, who know more things
Mm,
than I do, and then I try to get out of their way, and I just try to be their bullshit umbrella. I try to. Uh, Protect them from any bullshit coming from above, the board, investors, CEO, me, and let them just do whatever they're best at. That's the way I've always been, because it's what I respond to. It's the way
mhm.
I like to be managed. So, but the hardest thing about management is realizing that there's no single right answer. You have to figure out what each employee wants in a manager, and then do your best to be that for them. So you're constantly having to adapt and to change your approach based on who's on your team at any given time.
That makes sense. So have like a general rule overall, but then it's like tailored to each employee's specific needs.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, when I first became a vice president, so Real Networks acquired Listen.com, the company that had built Rhapsody, and then we spun it off as Rhapsody, its own independent company later. But I became an executive. I became a vice president at Real Networks, this publicly traded technology company, which was never in my life plan.
Mhm.
Had massive imposter syndrome initially. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't know all the jargon. Everybody that I was suddenly sitting around a board table with, had all kinds of experience that I didn't, and it made me feel very intimidated until my first executive retreat when we were, prepping the strategy for the coming fiscal year, and then you go out, like, you bowl and you have cocktails and then you have dinner together, and then you have more cocktails. And so we were at the more cocktail part of the evening, and at the bar, everybody wound up. I mean, not everybody. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but seriously, by the end of the night, I had this ring of people around me, who were just wanted to hear my rock and roll stories about life on the road, right? And I realized at that moment, I was like, oh, I was sitting here thinking, like, all these people think I'm an imposter and, like, they're gonna find me out. I actually have something they don't, that they're desperate for, some kind of creative magic thing, that they feel like they missed out on while they were at business school. So rather than looking at me as lesser, they're looking at me as different, and I should use that to my advantage. So I got over my imposter syndrome then, and I've been lucky in that most of the teams I've managed have been, I they're creatives, right? I've managed writers, I've managed designers, I've managed software development engineers who are just as creative as designers, uh, and they all have, artistic temperaments. And figuring out how you can communicate. And the thing is, when you're working on a song, or a story or something, that's you. It's an expression of you. And any criticism of it, you can't help but take it personally, even if it's
Yeah.
constructive criticism that ultimately makes it better. So figuring out how to talk to artists about their work product in a way that helps them understand this is not a personal reflection of you. This is just there's a mismatch between what you've delivered and what the business need is.
Yeah.
And you need to get more in line with the business need. Figuring out how to communicate that to artists in a way that they would trust, that's, I think, is the one thing I have that, coming from an artistic world, that other managers might lack.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been in a lot of different worlds, as I said earlier, you know, in tech and then in art and entertainment. And I've just got to the point where I don't even reference artists versus not. I just call them creators. Everyone that's a creator, whether you're creating an app or a song or a painting or a book, have similar wirings. And so it's if you approach them in a similar way, I think it's easier to talk to them overall.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zedge helps people make money when making art.
Yes.
You were acquired or your company's acquired, and now you've got, you know, finally announced this tape deck product, digital music service from Zedge with a mission to make it easier for musicians to make a living making music. want to end on this because this is kind of the culmination of you as an artist, you as a creator, you as a entrepreneur, and also a developer. So tell me about Tape Deck and how it's going to change the musical world.
Okay. Well, I will rewind a little bit. When I first got to Zedge, Zedge was entirely user generated content. So it was all just, pictures of Spider-Man and like the Joker that, fans had uploaded to Zedge. It was all given away for free and it was monetized through network advertising, mostly banner ads and interstitials. And so when Zedge acquired Freeform, they had this massive install base. It's got over 500 million installs. At the time, I think it was like over 35 million monthly active users. Uh, but they were making fractions of a penny per user, and it was clear there was more revenue to be had from these people. And so part of what they wanted Freeform's team to do was basically build a marketplace inside of Zedge. So we
Mhm.
built this thing we called Zedge Premium inside of the main Zedge app. So it was sort of walled off from the user generated content. And we went out and we licensed content directly from actual artists who were actually creating it. Whereas most of the stuff in all the UGC stuff in Zedge wasn't uploaded by the artist. It was just uploaded by a random fan who found it on the internet and liked it and uploaded it and wanted to share it. So we basically built a suite of tools for artists who, if they want to distribute their work through Zedge, they can. And then we give them a bunch of different options on if and how to monetize it. If they just want to give it away for free, they can. If they want to charge a price for it, they can do that. If they just want to put it behind a rewarded video and we'll split whatever advertising revenue comes in from that, they can do that. Uh, and it's very straightforward. It's based on what Freeform was doing, just adapted to visual artists. And so the plan all along had been to extend it to musicians, but since the existing Zedge product was mostly focused on visual artists, we started there. So it's just this year that we finally got the opportunity. We shored up the rest of the business enough that we said, okay, now we can expand Zedge Premium to music. And that's where Tape Deck comes in. Sat down with the team and explained the concept, explained what I'd done at Freeform, and said, I know that as a musician, the one music product that people are pissed at it now, but for a couple of you, the one music service that had the best reputation was Bandcamp, right? If you're an independent musician, all my stuff is available on Bandcamp. It's where I drive all my users that I can. Uh, and they're big, and it's just a digital download store. You can stream stuff on it, but it's not monetized. It's basically like it's so old fashioned in a way, right? Who
Yeah.
buys music anymore? Old people like me, basically, and my fans. But Bandcamp's big innovation that I love is the price that you set for your music in Bandcamp is a floor, not a ceiling.
Mm.
If somebody wants to buy your stuff, they show the price, and then there's this blank box where they have to type in what they want to pay. They can't type in less than the price, but they can type in more than the price. So I
Uh-huh.
sell all my music for $10 on Bandcamp. I think the average sales price is $12.75.
Okay.
Fluctuates between like $12.25 and $12.95. Um, and because almost everybody, always pays a little bit more. Some people pay the regular price. Some people pay $5 more, $10 more, $50 more. Sometimes just a dollar or two more. It all averages out to about $2 more per person. Uh, and I love that. Right. And they demonstrated that there's like at least a $20 million a year business to be had just focusing on selling indie music to fans who recognize the artists they love are struggling to make a living and proactively want to ensure they're paid as much as they possibly can be. So, given that, said let's build a music service that does what Freeform was trying to do, but rather than doing it through individual artist apps, it does it through a single app where everything is. And you know, the our main deal is we want to be as transparent as possible and easy to understand as possible. So basically, anyone who licenses music to Tape Deck, they set their own prices. They
Uh,
say what an album costs, they say what a track costs, they say what a play costs. If you want to charge 10 cents a play, you can charge 10 cents a play, right? Uh, and what we do is we give fans the ability to pay even more than the artist is asking for. And when we say pay, a lot of it is done with virtual currency, just like and this is what I learned from mobile gaming. Uh, in a music service, we use virtual currency for a couple of reasons. The first is if you have a catalog of millions of songs, just the administrative hassle of
Mhm.
creating each one of those things as an as a SKU, as a separate SKU. You literally have to have millions of SKUs so that people could make an in-app purchase of each individual track. And each time they do, you have to pay 30% more than you're getting to Apple, or you have to pay 30% of what you're getting to Apple or Google. So if you wanted to charge $1 a song, if the artist wants to charge $1 a song, I would have to charge $1.30 a song in order to give the artist their dollar. Um, so we do away with all that with virtual currency. Virtual currency means you just get the pack of virtual currency when you buy it. We pay the 15 to 30% tax to Apple and Google
Yep.
at that time. And we price it so that you get, the more you spend, the more you virtual currency you get. But that way the value of every credit, and we call our virtual currency plays. So you're buying plays in tape deck. Uh, the value of a play is consistent to the artist. You might have gotten, I'm just making up numbers here. Let's say you got 10,000 plays for $50. Uh, and someone else might have gotten 1,000 plays for free, right? Because they watched a bunch of rewarded videos or they redeemed a partner offer. Um, so, the value of a play to the user can vary. The value of a play to the artist is always the same. It's always a penny per play. And so virtual currency also lets us find lots of ways to give our users plays for free. They can watch rewarded videos, get 10 free plays every time you watch a commercial. You can play games. I made I think I'd have to look it up, but I think it was close to $100 in plays just playing Yahtzee. I got 7 plays. I got 7 plays for every minute that I played Yahtzee, right? And then if I got to certain levels, then I'd get like 400 credits and things like that. So literally, I spent nothing, and I played Yahtzee and I played Scrabble as well, right? And I now
Mhm.
have like 13,000 plays in play. I mean, in tape deck that I can spend. And so every one of those plays is a penny to musicians that I can just give them, right? So when I'm buying records in tape deck, same thing. The records cost $10. They give me an option. I can just hit a 5x button and give them $50 for the record. And what the hell? I've got 13,000 plays. So I can, if a record is, 1,000 plays, if so I just bought a record, the artist was charging 1,000 plays. I just hit the 5x button because I had so many goddamn plays. I didn't know what to do with them. I was like, give the artist the money. I like them anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
so the money stays in the app and in the ecosystem, and it makes it easier for people to consume different stuff, and then, I'm assuming that the artists then can cash out if they want to?
Oh, so no, the user has the virtual currency, but anytime they play a song by an artist or buy a song by an artist using those plays, every one of those plays is 1 penny for the artist.
I
So
see.
you get 1,000 of those plays when you sell an album. You get 100 plays when you sell a track. You get 1 play when you play a track. It's all every one of those is a penny. Unless the artist wants to charge 10 cents a play or 5 cents a
Yep.
play, which they're free to do. That's the general idea. So the idea is the artists are always getting paid, even when the user is getting music for free,
How
and they're
does
getting
a
paid more
artist
than anyone else is paying them.
Cool. How does an artist sign up? How does this work now? Like, I've got a whole bunch of, musicians we're working with, they're trying to get their name out there, this is something that they would probably love to take advantage of. What's the path?
Step one, if you're already in other services, you're using some kind of digital distributor, talk to your digital distributor and say, hey, are you with Tape Deck yet? If not, go get with Tape Deck. We're talking to everybody. Some of them are faster than others.
Yeah.
We will be building some self-serve tools so people can upload. Those probably won't roll out till early next year. So if your digital distributor, if you don't have a digital distributor or your digital distributor is haggling with us too longer than you want them to be, we will give you a way to inject your music directly into the system next year.
Amazing. I
Hmm.
appreciate your time so much. This is such a fascinating story overall, and I'm so happy that there are, as many people that I get to talk to that are trying to do right for artists and creatives that are leveraging the technologies and the things that we have available to us now to try to make the ecosystem a little bit fair overall. How does it feel to, have this vision, this idea that started years and years ago that's finally coming to realization?
Oh, it feels great, but I will also say it's weird in a way because I've been saying the same things consistently since 1999, but
Mm,
depending on who I'm working for, they get received positively or negatively based on the company name at the end of my name, right? So when
yeah.
I was saying all this same stuff on behalf of Rhapsody, I was a hero to independent musicians. As soon as I started saying it as a Googler, people were suspicious. And when I said music is priceless, you can't devalue it. They're like, "Oh, look at this asshole Google exec saying music, saying you can't charge for music." It's like, that's not what I said. What I said is you should be charging people who want to pay you $200 rather than $1. And the
Yeah.
people who want to pay you $0, you should accept. They're never going to pay you a dollar. Make them want to pay you a dollar by giving them your music for free. And accept there's a range. So it feels good. It feels good every time I see somebody make an in-app purchase or use our offer wall. And it feels good every time I get dozens of these emails a day. Someone says, "How do I get my music in tape deck?"
Yeah, I'm sure you're gonna be getting a lot more of those, especially going into 2026.
Cool.
Uh, Tim, thanks so much for your time, for taking us through your history and some of the stuff that you're working on. Over to you for the final word. What do you gotta say?
Um, be nice to everybody.